This is the demo for how to draw elevations for the project in Information and Communication module using the information from the floor plans. That was the first sheet, and then the section which we did last time. Refer also to the notes from the lecture that gives more information about elevations, what they're for, and what they're used. So for this project we will have 4 elevations, and the way we name them is based on the side that they are facing. So in this case we will have 4 elevations, and if you refer back to the floor plans and where you put the north symbol, that means how your building is oriented. So in this case this will be the northern facade, this will be the south, this will be the east, and this will be the west. For this demo I will only focus on one elevation. We'll show the unfinished demo of both south and west elevation, but in the interest of time I'm going to try and make this fast so you get the concept of how we approach drawing elevations. So why we need both the floor plans and the section. Floor plans gives us the horizontal info or where these components are located, such as openings in the walls and how big the spaces are. But sections give us the vertical information about how high are the floors, the levels, the roof, and the whole house. So we will be referring to both alternately as we start drawing elevations. So before we start drawing the elevations on this sheet, what I do and what I was recommending before is to do a little bit of pre-planning, which means basically planning how big the drawing will be on your sheet so you can plan how to lay it out in a nice way that you can fit all information without cramming it. So what I did here is basically just drew an outline of how big my south elevation will be. So this horizontal line here is basically the width of the house that is on this drawing, and then the height of the elevation is basically taken from the section sheet where I look at the highest point of the house, so basically between this ground floor, ground plane, and the highest point of the roof. So remember that we don't see footings in elevations. So I have the point here. I added some elevation marks to make it easier to read these heights. So my height here is just a little over 6 meters. So this is the height of my elevation, which is just a little over 6 meters. So I can start thinking about where these elevations can fit, so I can place all 4 neatly on this sheet. So this would give me enough room to place all the elevations and align them quite comfortably. So I will mark this as the starting point. And the starting point will be basically this corner here, and it will be the finished floor line. So I can start planning a little bit, and again I'm going to be using very light, faint lines. Again, I really have to do really have to work hard to make my lines parallel because I'm not using the drawing board. But this should be a lot easier for you. So I'm gonna do a very faint line of the ground floor. So this will be my 0.00 line. All the elevation points here have been referred compared to this finished floor line. So I'm gonna start doing these marks in relation to this one, but then in the end I'm also gonna check anything that I see below that and make sure I include it in the elevation. So I have my finished ground floor plan. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to refer to this plan, and because this is the side that I see, this is on the ground floor, this is on the first floor, I'm going to start translating all these horizontal points that I see on the floor. So like I said, only the horizontal bits. I have dimensions here, the external dimensions, wall to window points. So I'm just going to translate these onto my elevation sheet. So I'm starting with the far right, far left, and then I'm going to transfer these wall and window lines. So my wall bit is 80 centimeter, then my wall is 240, then I have another piece of wall which is again 80 centimeters, and then I have another window that is 240, and then I have the last bit of a wall which is 90. So I have these points now translated, which are these points. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start drawing the vertical lines from here, and the height of those lines will be basically this bit here. So this is the height of my ground floor, so I can see that it's about 235 centimeters. So I can just lightly start translating that. So I'm gonna again do this very lightly. So I'm only drawing up to the first floor height of the wall, because above that I will also have the first floor. So just to make it easier to discern between all the help lines. More precise dimensions will come after I put in the roof. So these are now the bits of wall and windows that I see on the first floor. So if I go back here, now I need to translate the vertical lines. And what is it that I see? So looking on this side, so this is the south facing, so I'm looking from this side, which is again this side. So now I have to see which points do I see looking on this side. So some of the points, so this is the one that I started drawing from. I will see a little bit of ground here. I don't see this point here because it's hidden by this part of the roof. So this is the point that I will see first. So there is then this thickness of the roof. There is this point that I also marked here with an elevation. I have this part of the wall that cuts into the roof. I also put the elevation mark for that. I have the window that it's 1 meter in between, and then I have the remaining thickness of the wall. So these are basically the points that I will see in the elevation, and those are the points that I'm going to start translating vertically. So the first point I'm going to do is this roof, which is sitting at 175 from the finished floor level. So I'm going to measure here 175, and I am going to draw the line. So this is the bottom of the roof, the bottom point of the roof, the lower point of the roof, the gutter line, and there is the thickness in here that I'm also going to translate. So this is basically the gutter and the thickness I see from the front. So the remaining part of the wall is hiding behind the roof. The next thing I need is this point here. So that one sits at 405. So that will be the upper part of this roof that sits over the ground floor level. So this is the upper line of the roof. So these are the far edges, and I'm going to finish the roof level later. I'm just going to remove some of the extra lines here that extend from the ground floor just to keep it clean. The next thing I can do is translate this upper part of the wall and these points of the roof. So that's going to be on my first floor. So the next point is the wall of the first floor, which sits at 540. So I measure 540. So this is the height of the wall where my windows are. So that's going to be the wall part, and that's going to be narrower because my first floor is not as wide as the ground floor. Then I have the bottom, the lower part of the upper roof, which is at 575. So that is sitting here. And then I also have the thickness of the roof above that. So I'm just going to mark those with very light lines. So basically these three lines that I drew are these 3 points that I see from this side. So what I'm missing here now is the upper floor, the first floor, information which sits above the lower. So I have the position of where the outer edges of the walls sit in relation to the wall edges of the ground floor. So there are 185 on either side. So I'm just going to measure 185 from both walls. And I'm going to pull those up. So this is the part above the roof. And here's the one on the other side. So this is my first floor sitting over the ground floor. What is left to do upstairs is to now add these windows. So what I'm going to do is just translate these dimensions from the first floor plan. So again, I have all of them measured and dimensioned. So I'm going to follow those and just translate. So I have the first little wall that sits in 70. Then I have my windows 110, 110, and 110. And I'm also going to draw those, just pull those lines up. So these will be the outlines of where my upper windows sit. There will be one piece of information I have to refer back in the section, so I correctly locate these windows in terms of height. So right now I marked the location of the windows, but they extend from this point to this point. So I need to bring them to the correct height because my windows are only 1 meter high. So I have this information measured. So it sits at 20 centimeters above and below. So now I have enough information that I can actually draw these windows more visibly. So now I have the upper floor windows positioned. And I pretty much have most of the information included here. So now I can start actually darkening some of the information. For example, what I'm going to start doing is make the edges of the wall and windows on the ground floor dark as well, because now I know that they're going between the finished floor and the roof line. So I'm just gonna make double lines for the windows to make it easier to spot them. So these are basically my windows. I can add more detail later. So I have the outline. This is the bottom of the roof, and what I'm going to do, I'm also going to make it a little bit extend beyond the walls. So I'm going to give it at least about 15 to 20 centimeters, so the roof is not completely flush with the walls. So that's why my roof is going to start a little bit out here. And then I'm also going to draw the rest of the roof up to this roof line, and also on this side. I have a bit of a line extending. And then I have this upper roof line, and then this roof thickness that I see in the front where the gutter is. So this is basically my ground floor, the roof, and the windows on the upper floor, so I can still do the same on the upper floor. So these are the wall edges. I'm also going to do upstairs what I did here and just extend the roof a little bit on the side of the wall. So I'm just going to give it some slight overhang, and then I'm going to make this upper thickness visible, and this is the wall of the upper floor that I see. So that's basically what I see in terms of the elevation. So if you remember, what is left here to do is just added this bit of the wall below the finished floor line. So this is, I measured also and put an elevation mark which sits at 50 centimeters below the finished level. So this will be my ground line. So this will be that very thick, it's the thickest line that would give that will ground my building here. So this is the rough information, that it's all there. We have all the walls, all the windows. What I can start doing now is basically making this a bit more materialistic. So I can start using the material designation to depict that the lower level, for example, is in brick. So if you look at the notes, you will see that brick in 100 is basically just very densely spaced horizontal parallel lines. For siding, to make it different than the brick, use the same principle, just space them a little bit further apart, so I can show that, for example, on the upper floor to see the immediate difference. So what I'm going to do here is actually start outlining the brick, and I'm just going to begin and show you in the finished demo example of how this looks like. So just to save time, I'm not going to do all of it. So for example, this is how you would continue doing for the brick. If, say, you want to have siding on the upper roof level, you would do just slightly further spaced lines that visually say basically that this is not brick. So this is some siding information. The next thing I would do, I would also do some hatching of the roof, also to denote that maybe this is some slate or tiles. Again, scale 1 to 100 is difficult to show this, so you can just use this very simplified manner of denoting what the siding is. I'm going to show how the rest of this will look in the finished example. To draw the south or to draw the west elevation, so for example, what I would do next is here draw this west elevation. So in order to do that, I would actually do a couple of lines and just extend them from these points of interest, such as the roof lines, and also these will help outline and reference where these components are. So again, these would be the height lines that are referred from the section. But the west elevation would basically follow this outline. So it's relatively easy to transfer this one. And the principle would be the same. So it would be looking at this side, transferring these points, elevating them up, and looking into the section and drawing this. So look at the finished example and just complete the remaining 3 elevations using the same principles.